What a win! Philadelphia 76ers were down by as many as 14 points against the Miami Heat in the play-in tournament, and they pull off a clutch, terrific win, and it's a victory that would have never happened with Doc Rivers as the head coach. Nick Nurse had his fingerprints all over this game. Nic Batum was incredible at 35 years old after he nearly didn't get traded to the 76ers because his wife didn't want to move across the country. And give credit where credit is due. Joel Embiid was atrocious for three and a half quarters. But then Joel Embiid stepping up in the guts of the game and in 3 consecutive possessions, buries a three-pointer and has 2 really good assists. He was great in those final moments, also rebounded the basketball very, very well. We're going to talk about all of this. Philadelphia now advancing to the first round of the playoffs. They will play the New York Knicks in the first round. That series starts on Saturday. A Knicks team that I think can be had, and a Knicks team that Joel Embiid is 16-3 against throughout his NBA career. This is 76ers Now. I'm Chase Sr. Let's talk about this dub, but please make sure you subscribe to the show. Make sure you tune in for our watch parties as well, all playoffs long. As long as the Sixers keep winning, as long as they keep playing, we're going to be here doing some live play-by-play audience interaction for these watch parties. We were live for this game between Philadelphia and Miami. So it was ugly for a really long time for the Sixers. They end up storming back from that 14-point deficit. They were so much better in that third and fourth quarter compared to what they were and what they did in the first half. They were stifled against that Miami Heat zone. They had no answers. And you could tell that the previous Sixers playoff failures were looming. You could feel it watching the game. The Sixers could feel it with how they were playing. The fans felt it at the Wells Fargo Center. Boos were raining down because that Sixers first half performance was despicable. They could not find an answer against that Heat zone defense. Joel Embiid, bad body language. Tyrese Maxey, because of the zone, could not get a good look. I thought Nick Nurse could have gone to a Buddy Hield and a campaign a little bit earlier. He didn't pull the plug on Tobias Harris, who I thought was terrible, who I think should be benched for Batum as part of that starting 5. We're going to continue to have those conversations. The Sixers couldn't buy a bucket in that first half. And the Miami Heat, it's not like they were lighting the world on fire with what they did offensively. Philadelphia actually played pretty good defense in that first half. But some timely buckets from Jimmy Butler. The Heat were getting some second chance opportunities. Tyler Hero had a couple of big plays here and there. And they set the tone in that first half. But in the second half, this was one of the more clutch 76ers victories that we've seen, I'm not kidding you, in a really, really long time. And with the tactical adjustments, with the team maintaining confidence, not losing their cool, coming back to lead a comeback win, again, the Sixers would have lost this game under Glenn Small Game Rivers because the adjustments wouldn't have been made. The Sixers culturally would have just pissed down their leg. And that pressure, which was palpable in South Philadelphia, would have been felt. The rotations wouldn't have been what they were. I thought Nick Nurse was just brilliant in the second half, putting in the lineup of campaign with Buddy Hield, going to Nico Batum, benching Tobias Harris at the end of the game. It was no accident that the Sixers played their best basketball when Tobias Harris was on the bench. He game planned it strategically well. Kelly Oubre had those 5 fouls. He brought him in at the end of the game, had that clutch and one off the give from Joel Embiid. These are all things that elite coaches do. And the Sixers finally have an elite coach. And it's going to give them a chance to do something they haven't done since 2001, and that's make it past the second round of the NBA playoffs. Let's talk about Joel Embiid here, Chip. He finishes with 23 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. I thought he passed the basketball in some of the critical junctures of this game very well. The three-pointer to give them a little bit of breathing room as part of that comeback was absolutely huge. And Embiid, his body language was bad. He was laboring. It looked as though he was tired. But give him credit because in the past, Embiid has not been able to close these games in a strong manner. He closed this game in a very strong manner. Now, Tyrese Maxey only had 19 points, 6 of 16 from the floor, 1 of 6 from 3. That was a byproduct of that Heat zone defense taking Maxey out of the game. That was a huge part of the game plan for Miami because Maxey in 4 games against the Heat this year had averaged 27 points per game. But they were double-teaming Maxey anytime they had a chance to, and they just didn't give him open looks. But with Embiid struggling and Maxey not getting some of those vacant opportunities at all 3 levels, who showed up? Nic Batum, at the ripe age of 35 years old, comes through when the Sixers needed it. Just a massive performance. And we talked about this all throughout this week. I have said I would start Nic Batum over Tobias Harris. Nick Nurse has a decision to make against the New York Knicks as far as that goes. I don't think Tobias Harris, who's lost his confidence, he's mentally cooked right now, is going to be a part of this closing 5. But what Batum gives you, he's played in big games internationally, big games throughout his NBA career. The short release helped the Sixers beat the zone. He knocked down the threes. It spread the floor. He played really good defense at times against Tyler Hero, against Jimmy Butler. There was nobody else really doing much offensively, and Chip, Nic Batum drops 20, 7 of 12 from the floor, 6 trifectas.
And just what a gutsy performance all around after a disaster of a first half, right? And it was really all around. It was a team effort. You know, Joel Embiid, terrible the first 3 quarters. Really turned it around, but he wouldn't have been able to turn it around if it wasn't for, again, Nic Batum hitting big shots. Buddy Hield hit a couple big shots. You had Kyle Lowry getting in there, playing good defense.
Mixing it up.
Like, just everybody coming together. Even Paul Reed gave you good minutes in the second half for the few minutes he was in when Embiid was resting. Kelly Oubre was scoreless in the first half.
Yep.
Came back the second half and was huge, especially with that and one down the stretch. Credit to the whole team, credit to Nick Nurse, because to make the adjustments they needed to win this game, it's not something this team would have done in the past. Now we get into the first round. Again, we'll see what happens with this rotation because Tobias, as you mentioned, was not good. Bricked a couple of threes.
There were 3-pointers he was taking that didn't even hit the rim.
Didn't even hit the rim. He airballed at least 1 or 2. It was disgusting to see. But they get out of this game. They fight back. And I'm excited to see now what they can do moving forward because that's a good win against a team that was in the finals last year. So, great stuff.
Do we have a prize picks to hit? We'll get to prize picks, but let me just throw this out there too and talk about it real quick. What were some of our keys to the game? The Heat were going to try to muddy this game up, slow it down, dictate the pace because they knew they were the inferior team. That's exactly what they did. You couldn't let Jimmy Butler get going. He didn't really get going. He was a minus in the plus-minus category. I imagine the knee or leg injury, whatever happened with him, impacted him just a little bit. Butler ended up having 19 points in the game on 5 of 18 shooting. You couldn't let Miami cook from 3. They shot 36% from 3, but they didn't blow the doors off as far as knocking down some 3-pointers. You had to get over the mental psyche of getting owned by Miami in some of these big games, failing to show up in general in some of these pressure cooker games, especially in Philadelphia when the crowd gets silent and they start to get anxious and they start to boo you. Years prior, Philadelphia would just completely fold and collapse like a lawn chair. And to that point, number 1, the Heat did exactly that. Muddy the game up. Throw out that zone. It was ugly in that first half. But then what do? Payne hits a three in that second half. Buddy Hield playmaking off the dribble. He hit a big three. Batum hitting the threes. They found a way to beat that zone. They found a way, and you said it during the watch party, for the first time in the game, third, fourth quarter, they were dictating the pace of the game.
And that was one of the keys to the game as well, is you knew that the Heat were going to make it physical. You knew they were going to try to determine and dictate the tempo of the game. There was a point where in that third quarter, the Sixers started making that run after, I believe it was Caleb Martin, missed those 2 free throws, and the crowd goes crazy because they're getting free chicken, and then you come down, score, the Heat turn the ball over. That was the first time where the vibes just kind of shifted. You kind of felt like, okay, the Sixers are playing basketball again, right?
Yeah.
And from that point on, just got better and better, and that was really the turning point. Credit to the whole squad.
So this sets up a first-round series, and it feels like a second-round series because I aged a couple of years during that game against Miami. I thought they were cooked because the previous history tells me that the Sixers were cooked. But they get this clutch win. They exercise their demons against the Heat. They get back at Jimmy Butler. It's a good victory. Let's talk a little bit about the Sixers-Knicks series coming up around the corner. We're going to do a full preview of this first-round series tomorrow, so that's why you subscribe. Be on the lookout for that. First, make sure you sign up with Prize Picks, best daily fantasy sports app in the game, and the largest independently run, most used DFS app in North America here. They make daily fantasy sports so easy, and they have the best deal that any DFS app has to offer. A $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. You pick 2 or more players, you choose more or less on their projected stat totals, and you can win some big-time money. Now, our selections for this Sixers Heat play-in game, we had Joel Embiid more than 24.5 points. He did lead the Sixers in scoring, but only with 23. Tyrese Maxey, 30 points and assists. We went with the more there. Kelly Oubre was held in check, more than 13.5. We were good, though, on the Jaime Jaquez pick, but that's kind of how Prize Picks goes. Win big-time money, pick more, pick less with Prize Picks today, and you can withdraw your winnings all within the Prize Picks app. $100 deposit match, prizepicks.com/CLNS. So now the Sixers catapult into the NBA playoffs. Got to say the play-in tournament does provide some excitement. I watched last night, I watched tonight. Can you imagine if these were one-and-done games like the NCAA tournament? Even if they did 3-game series, just the intensity that these games would provide, it'll never happen just because of the history of the NBA, having those legendary Game 7s and all that with statistics and trends and just the history of the game. But it was very exciting, and it was great to see the Sixers win this game. And now we have a Sixers-Knicks playoff series for the first time since 1989. All the way back in 1989, the Knicks did sweep Philadelphia 3-0. They won Game 1, 102-96, Game 2, 107-106, and then Game 3 in overtime, 116-115. So those games closely contested many decades ago. And the Sixers previous to this year have really fared well against the Knicks, but Joel Embiid on the roster. Joel Embiid is 16-3 against the Knicks in his career. This year, though, this is a different Knicks team. Jalen Brunson is one of the best point guards in the game. They have depth. They made the trade for OG Anunoby. They went all in. That move worked. Tom Thibodeau has really extracted the best out of this particular Knicks team. And New York this year had their way for the first time in a long time against Philadelphia. At one point, there was like 25 straight victories for the Sixers against the Knicks before the Knicks started to really get their stuff together. Here's the playoff schedule, and this is what we know as of right now. Game 1 is going to be Saturday night, 6 o'clock Eastern, ESPN, live here on 76ers Now. That'll be at Madison Square Garden. Game 2, Monday. Happy Passover to all of you who celebrate. That game also going to be at MSG. It's going to be TNT. Tip-off is an hour and a half later at 7:30 p.m. Eastern. The series will switch back to Philadelphia on Thursday and an extended rest. Sunday will be game 4. We know all of those games are definitely going to be played. 7:30 for game 3. And then on Sunday, 1 o'clock for game 4. If necessary, game 5 will be the 30th of April. And then game 6 and 7, the 2nd and the 4th of May. And those times, TBD. Our initial thoughts on the Sixers playing the Knicks. The Knicks are for real. They're the 2 seed for a reason. They certainly earned it. This is not a Knicks team that we've seen in previous years that might have a ceiling of winning a first-round series. They can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. They can represent the East this year. They play Boston very, very well, and they have the last 2 years because they match up very well against them defensively. But as easy as the Knicks can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, I believe Philadelphia has a realistic shot to win this series. And let me explain why. I think in the NBA playoffs, in a series, you need a legitimate, bona fide number 2 scorer. We saw that was such a problem for Joel Embiid for so long when Ben Simmons just really collapsed in some of these games. Joel Embiid was looking for a number 2 scorer, a go-to guy. We saw it when Jimmy Butler played with Joel Embiid, the benefits of that. You look at past NBA champions. They have a couple of players who could put the biscuit in the basket. Jalen Brunson is the go-to scorer for New York. And I don't even know who Philadelphia is going to put on him. Kyle Lowry at moments, he can use up his fouls. Kelly Oubre from time to time. You put Tyrese Maxey on him. Jalen Brunson, National College Player of the Year, 2-time national champion at Villanova. His growth, his development as a player has been terrific. But who's that number 2 option? Is it going to be OG Anunoby? When OG Anunoby has played on this Knicks team, when he's been healthy, they've been one of the best teams in the NBA. But in a playoff series, you can game plan against Jalen Brunson, and Nick Nurse is going to do that, try to take him away and force everybody else to beat you. As far as size goes, they have Mitchell Robinson, who's been banged up, Isaiah Hartenstein. Joel Embiid, if remotely healthy, and he didn't look all that healthy, which isn't a good sign against the Heat, should be able to at least have his way a little bit. And you have that co-star, does Philadelphia, in Tyrese Maxey. So I do think the Sixers have a chance here. Chip, what do you think about this matchup in the early initial going?
Yeah, the 76ers absolutely have a chance. And look, the Knicks are a very, very good team. Since the trade deadline, look, they've dealt with a lot of injuries, but when they have OG Anunoby out there on the floor, they are one of the best teams in the league. Now, of course, they're going to be without Julius Randle. When they had all 3 of those players, they were very, very good.
I think that helps them, honestly, because he's been an awful playoff.
Not a great playoff performer.
Yeah.
But look, at the end of the day, the Sixers should have the best player on the floor in Joel Embiid, assuming, again, he's healthy. You have Maxey. The Knicks have a lot of players like, Dante DiVincenzo, Miles McBride, Bogdanovich. Like, they have guys who can come off the bench. DiVincenzo starts for them, but they're deep. And it's going to be another tough physical series. We know Tom Thibodeau is going to coach his ass off. They're going to be, again, similar to the Heat, physical, very defensive-minded.
Yep.
They're going to beat you up. They're going to have a lot of bodies to throw at and be between Mitchell Robinson and Isaiah Hartenstein. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be another physical series. But the Sixers have the talent to be able to get as far as they want to, honestly, as long as Embiid can be healthier than he was tonight, because he clearly was not 100% tonight. If he continues to play like he did in the first few quarters of this game, they're not going to win this series.
Yeah.
But they have the ability to. Again, they should have the best player in the series, which sometimes in the playoffs is all it comes down to. It's going to be a great series. I expect a 6 or 7 game series here. Jalen Brunson's going to be a problem. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and another thing about the Knicks, they're a team under Thibodeau that is going to play hard. They're going to have a lot of effort. They max out night in, night out, because that's the Thibodeau way. But when you get in the playoffs, we see these teams kind of struggle sometimes because the other team is always going to match that intensity level. And they're always also going to play very, very hard. So I think it's a fascinating matchup. I-95 rivalry, Philadelphia, New York, a long history as far as sports organizations go, and a long history as far as American history goes between New York and Philadelphia, because Philadelphia is looked at as kind of the ugly stepchild, the little brother to New York and sometimes Boston in a certain regard. Cannot wait for it. It is going to be epic. Who you got? PHI for the Sixers, NYK for the Knicks. Full-blown preview to come tomorrow here on 76ers Now. Can't wait for it, and we'll see you on Saturday night for Game 1 live.